bubblegum.
You're listening to Hear the Chew Bubblegum, recorded from a secret location in the city that moves mountains.
Greetings.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick it, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
How's it going today, Dirty Dan?
It is going very well, sir. How about you?
I am doing good. I'm still on pins and needles from episode 45, the Roundtable. Actually, big news, episode 45, part 1 of the Roundtable, because the Roundtable will also stretch into the following Sunday and be episode 46 will be part 2. We are coming to you recording this episode from the new permanent Here to Chew Bubblegum studios from the heart of Appalachia, located under a shopping mall near the city that moved mountains. And we have a special guest in the studio with us, Mr. Justin Perkins of Talk Junkie.
Good to be here with you guys today.
Justin, thank you very much for being here. Justin was part of our roundtable. Justin, what's your thoughts on the roundtable?
That's definitely one of the most informative and one of the best discussions I think I've ever been in. I got to meet some really nice new people today, and I had a blast. I mean, it's one of the best podcasts I've been involved in. I really, really enjoy it.
Well, thank you very much. And I totally agree with you. Dirty Dan, what was your takeaway from it?
Oh man, everything Justin said tenfold. It was awesome to have not just Justin on the show finally with me, but DJ Nicke back and Rebecca, and then also AURON and Sonya to join. Everybody comes from a little bit different background together. That was just whoo.
Yes, and we will have, or up as of now on our YouTube page, will be this week. We've done it a little bit differently. The part 1 of the episode is up on the YouTube page, but it is also a video episode, yes. Which, we had recorded it on Zoom. In part 1, there is a little bit of interruption because we had a storm move through and wipe out the internet, but we got that took care of. The fine folks at AT&T took care of that for us. Part 2, hitchless. I mean, there was no hiccups, there was no hitches. And hopefully we've got a good sound today. I think we do. I'm really excited about it.
So am I.
So we're going to you will be hearing clips from both episodes throughout the show. Don't forget, you can find this on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcast, Anchor, just anywhere you find quality podcast.
Here to chewbubblegum.com.
Yes. We're going to start out. Do you have just some of your stories from last week that we didn't get to that you're going to talk about?
Yeah, so I have one pulled up in front of me right now.
All right. Well, read that to us and talk about it. Me and Justin will jump in and give our thoughts on it.
So the story is titled UFOs Regularly Spotted in Restricted U.S. Airspaces. It's from an actual quote-unquote reputable news site, and it's actually a pretty well unbiased story. So earlier this summer, the Director of National Intelligence and Secretary of Defense released a highly anticipated unclassified report about something the Pentagon calls Unidentified Aerial Phenomena, or UAP, more commonly known as UFOs. The government's grudging acknowledgement of 144 mysterious sightings documented by our military comes after decades of public denial. But as we first reported in May, whatever is trespassing in our skies and seas poses a serious safety risk to our servicemen and women as well as our national security. Bill Whitaker said, "So what you are telling me is that UFOs, or unidentified flying objects, are real." Lou Elizondo, says, Bill, I think we're beyond that already. The government has already stated for the record that they're real. And I'm not telling you that. The United States government is telling you that. Lewis spent 20 years running in military intelligence operations worldwide, in Afghanistan, the Middle East, all over Guantanamo. He hadn't given UFOs a second thought until 2008, and that's when he was asked to join something at the Pentagon called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or AATIP, or ATIP. Lou then said, the mission of ATIP was quite simple. It was to collect and analyze information involving anomalous aerial vehicles, what I guess in the vernacular you call them UFOs, or as we say, UAPs. Bill replied, you know how this sounds. It sounds nutty or wacky. Lou then says, look, Bill, I'm not telling you that it doesn't sound wacky. What I'm telling you is that it's real. The question is, what is it? What are they? What are their intentions? What are the capabilities that they have? How can we identify them not posing a threat? Buried away in the Pentagon, ATIP was part of a $22 million program sponsored by then Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid to investigate UFOs. When El Zanato took over in 2010, he focused on the national security implications of UAPs documented by U.S. service members. That is much like the Antarctica account that I told you about of the flight engineer looking out and the pilot turning around saying, buddy, they're not ours.
Yeah.
Lou goes on to say, imagine a technology that can do 600 to 700 G-forces. They can fly at 13,000 miles an hour. They can even evade radar, and they can fly through air, water, and possibly space. And, oh, by the way, has no obvious signs of propulsion, no wings, no control surfaces, and yet can still defy all of the natural effects of Earth's gravity. That's precisely what we're seeing. Elizondo tells us that ATIP was a loose-knit mix of scientists, electro-optical engineers, avionics and intelligence experts, often working part-time in addition to their regular full-time gigs. They combed through data and records and analyzed videos like the one that was attached to this article. A Navy aircrew struggled to lock onto a fast-moving object off the U.S. Atlantic coast in 2015. And recently released images may not convince UFO skeptics, but the Pentagon admits it doesn't know what in the world this isn't or is. Bill Whitaker then asked, so what do you say to the skeptics? It's refracted light, weather balloons, a rocket being launched, Venus, what? Lou then responded, in some cases, there are simple explanations for what people are witnessing, but there are some that are not. We're not going to simply just jump to a conclusion that's saying, oh, that's a UAP out there. They're doing their due diligence. It's some sort of new type of cruise missile technology. Is it something that China developed? Is it some sort of high altitude balloon that's conducting reconnaissance? Ultimately, when you have exhausted all of those what ifs, you're still left with the fact that it is in our airspace and it is a real thing. And that's when it becomes compelling, because that's when it becomes problematic. Former Navy pilot Ryan Graves calls whatever is out there a security risk. He told his FA-18 F Squadron began seeing UAPs hovering over restricted airspace southeast of Virginia Beach in 2014 when they updated their jet's radar. So it made it possible for them to zero in with infrared targeting cameras, and they had no idea what they were. And they were much more maneuverable than their own aircraft, but they didn't know how to react when encountering one. Bill goes on to ask, or say, so you're seeing it both with radar and infrared, and that tells you that there's something out there. And Ryan stated to him, it's pretty hard to spoof that. Heat signatures don't lie. The photographs were taken in 2019 in the same area, also attached to the article. The Pentagon confirms that these images of objects are unidentifiable. They have no idea what they are. Lieutenant Graves told us pilots training off the Atlantic coast are seeing things like that more and more all the time. Every day for at least a couple of years. And Bill says, wait a minute, every day for a couple of years? And Lieutenant Graves just simply replied, uh-huh. He goes on to say, I didn't see an exhaust plume either. I saw no heat trace other than the object, including this one, which I will hold up to the screen for you real quick to see.
Oh yeah, that's
the
famous one.
you just see the heat signature of the actual object itself, nothing coming off it, which was taken off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida in 2015, and it was targeted on Graves' camera while he was in flight with the squadron. There are sound bites from the pilots that are saying, "Look at this thing, it's rotating, my gosh." They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots to the west. Look at that thing, dude. Like, they're in disbelief of what they're actually seeing in front of them. Bill asks them, you can sort of hear the surprise in their voices then. And Lieutenant Graves said, you absolutely can. They seem to have broke character a bit and were just kind of amazed at what they were seeing, so much that it became a safety distraction. Bill Whitaker then asked, what do you think when you see something like this? And Lieutenant Graves kind of struggled to answer it. He said, this is a difficult one to explain. You have rotation. You have high altitudes and extreme altitude changes. You have propulsion, right? I don't know. I don't know what it is, quite frankly. He told us that pilots speculate that they're one of three things: secret U.S. technology, an adversary spy vehicle, but more than likely it's something otherworldly, he calls it. He says, the highest probability it's a threat observation right now. Just because, as he previously stated, they don't know how they're going to react, how they're going to maneuver. So Bill said, could it be Russian or Chinese technology? And Ryan said, I don't see why not. He was asked if he was alarmed, and he said, I am worried, frankly. If these were tactical jets from another country, they'd be hanging out up there. It would be a massive issue. But it's not that. It looks completely different. We're not willing to actually look at the problem in the face. We're just happy to ignore the fact that they're out there watching us every day, and we go on. The government has ignored it, at least publicly, since closing the Project Blue Book investigation in 1969. But that began to change after an incident off Southern California in 2004, which was documented, again, by radar, like we talked about in the Roundtable episode with Ronald Reagan. And it was also documented by camera and 4 naval aviators. We spoke to 2 of them, David Fravor, a graduate of the Top Gun Naval Flight School and commander of the FA-18 Squadron on the USS Nimitz, and flying at his wing, Lieutenant Alex Dietrich, who has never spoken publicly about the encounter until now. Alex is then quoted saying, I never wanted to be on national TV, no offense, and I don't blame him. Bill asks, so why are you doing this? And Alex says, because I was in a government aircraft on the clock, and I feel a responsibility to share what I can, and it's unclassified. It was November 2004, and the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group was training about 100 miles southwest of San Diego. For a week, the advanced new radar on a nearby ship, the USS Princeton, had detected what operators were calling multiple anomalous aerial vehicles over the horizon, descending 80,000 feet in less than 1 second. On November 14th, Fravor and Dietrich, each with a weapons system officer in the backseat, were diverted to investigate. They found an area of roiling whitewater the size of a 737 in an otherwise completely calm blue sea. Fravor said, so we're looking at this. Her backseater says, hey, Skipper, do you, and about that go out, I said, dude, do you see that thing down there? And what we saw was this little white Tic Tac looking object, and it's just kind of moving above the whitewater area, creating those ripples. As Dietrich circled above, Fravor went in for a closer look. Yep, that's a Tic Tac, still pointing north-south, it goes, click, and just turns abruptly and starts mirroring me. So as I'm coming down, it starts coming up. He was asked, so you're mimicking your move? So it's mimicking your moves. And Fravor says, yeah, it was aware we were there. He said it was about the size of his F-18, which worried him, and with no markings, no wings, and no exhaust plumes. Just a massive ripple on the ocean below. Fravor said, I wanted to see how close I can get. So I go like this, and it's climbing still. And when it gets right in front of me, it just disappears. Disappears? He says disappears, like completely gone. It had sped off. Not active camouflage, not cloaking. It literally just disappeared.
Now, and this is the video that they released last April, correct? The one with the picture
yes,
you showed me.
But the article was transcribed 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. What was your?
What do you guys think on that?
Yeah, I was going to ask Justin, what was your thoughts on that when they came last year in April and they released this video?
Well, first, when speaking on regards of Elizondo, Harry Reid was such a big deal in the UFO community, and he can't do it forever. If they don't come out and try to discredit Elizondo for some reason, I look for him taking over that role. But the Fravor footage, the Tic Tac footage, is the first footage I ever seen where I looked at it and said, I don't see, and I may not have seen a full clip, I don't see the defined physics aspect of it, but I see something that is most definitely not supposed to be there doing what it's doing in the way that it's doing it. And that's the first time the government ever released something that I got excited about, and I said, this is it. They're going to let the cat out of the bag. And you know, you can play devil's advocate. All right, it's where it should be. If it is enemy craft, which I don't believe is even remotely possible. I mean,
No.
yeah, they've proven they can't keep up. Or if it's our own, it's where it should be. It's around military installations. It's in restricted airspace. But if you're going to be honest, that's exactly where it should be if it's not of this earth, because no matter what their reason for visiting is, the first thing is look at the threat. You know, I mean, look at the gentleman that come off the boat and went to that tribe that had never been exposed to, to Westerners and was shot with arrows. And you want to know what you're going into. Yeah. So you want to look for these war machines. You want to look for this restricted airspace. That's where you should see them if that's what it is. But that footage is long, as well as the other one. That wasn't off the Nimitz, correct? The other one was off of the Nimitz.
Yes.
Those two are two of the best. To me, the best we've captured, as far as not necessarily showing the shape and all of that, but because you've got the infrared, you've got the gimbal and all that, it shows its pattern of movement and its ability to accelerate and really manipulate the space around it in a way that not only do we don't know that we have anything that can do that, but theoretically we've not really come up with a way that it's even possible to have anything that can do that.
Yeah.
And not to mention that up until that point, one of the most modern notable naval pilots, Fravor, was one of the most advocate on there's no such thing as UAPs or UFOs.
Right.
And he was very public about that, constantly trying to disprove it. Anytime something would be leaked, because he had so much experience, he would do the research, put it out to present. Nope, it's this. It's not anything unexplainable. It's not extraterrestrial. UFOs don't exist. And he says that in an interview. I'm not a UFO guy. I've never believed him until that day.
And then he did. And what I think is fascinating about this is that, the government did release this, but this was after it had already leaked through the, to the stars. Jeremy Corbell and to the Stars Academy. And this is, and they said they don't know what it is. I think they pretty much said that in 1952 when you had the unidentified objects over the White House.
Yeah. But the thing now is we're getting to an age where documentation and evidence and footage is getting so much easier to obtain that the weather balloon and the swamp gas, that's not going to hold up anymore.
No.
It's not going to pacify people, because here it is. Not just, this is a situation where, okay, you've got two pilots, highly decorated, good pilots, know their job. They know avionics. They know what's happening. Not only did they see it, and, you can go by their story and their account, but they've got video to back it up.
Yeah.
You
they
can't
have
say
actual
that
gun camera footage. They have radar footage. There's all of that to back their account up. And to me, it's, when we've been asked and we've talked about sometimes, what makes you think that there's something else out there, or how would we know there's something else out there? It's because the people who are publicly advocating the most, that are on the good side, are presented with something they cannot any longer deny.
The thing
this case just like this.
The thing that Commander Fravor said that really stuck with me the most is, he said out of the whole incident, there was things that amazed him, there was things that he couldn't explain, but the thing that worried him the most is it actively jammed his weapon system. It wasn't something he could override. It wasn't something he could do anything about. It moving at that speed and its ability to move, you're not engaging it manually. You don't have the ability to follow it manually, so you have to depend on that targeting system. And it's not an issue for this craft because it can just jam it. And, that's an act of war.
Yeah.
Technically, he has the right at that point to engage.
Yes.
How do you engage?
It also diverted his course. It put him on autopilot.
So send him totally somewhere else.
That's something, there's no way you're going to sit down and convince me that, say whether it be Russia, China, that they've got to the point that they can override. I mean, literally these jets, and I've heard about this for months now, these jets that the Chinese are raving about, their new stealth jets, they are just a complete and total knockoff of our lower-end jets. Yes, and they're not even building them for their own defense. They're building them to sell to countries who can't afford our surplus jets because we don't sell them outside of Israel.
Right.
We don't sell them very many places.
They were able to get a hold of one of our wrecked F-16s, and they literally, it looks identical. It's like 6 inches longer, and that's about the only major physical difference of this plane. It's got a very similar propulsion spec. It's got a very similar weight spec. It's got a very similar capacity, and everything about it says it's an F-16, just a China knockoff for a little cheaper.
And at one point, they were promoting it that way as a clone.
Yeah,
I mean, they steal technology at every turn, so they're not above it. But they were very open that it was a clone.
And the thing that also solidifies, obviously, I was a believer anyway, but that it's not Russian or Chinese, is that we were the first people to come up with what they call the LRAD, which is a very accurate sound machine that is used to, it projects a very, very obnoxiously loud frequency, which can be changed, change pitches, add something. It can cause electronic malfunctions. It will literally make someone's eardrums pop and burst out of their ears. We were the first to do that. And that only came about just a few years before this sighting. So if we were only up to a little sound frequency, anyone else can have something produced that can not only jam a weapon system, which is the act of war, but also take over the avionics for a few seconds to change their course no matter what's happening, and then suddenly it goes back to normal.
I've got an idea, and I don't know this right, on why this was released when it was released. At the point that this was released, the U.S. knew the checkmate was coming, the new Russian aircraft. Now, if this is American technology, and it's not to say, maybe we got it from somewhere else. If it is our technology, maybe that's the American government's way without showing so much that they get to see this and get some information from it, but it's their way of saying, nice try, but that's not checkmate. Or if it is something of another world, maybe wanting Russia to believe that this is ours and you're not to the level you think you're at.
Well, but if they were going to do that, wouldn't they put it out years before?
I think they're very reluctant to put it out. I'm saying this, and this is the first time in my adult life I've ever said this. I do not honestly believe that what they're showing, if it's legitimate, and I feel that it is, I don't feel that footage was doctored. If it's legitimate, I do not believe they either A, own it as the United States government, or B, were able to develop it on their own as the United States government. Because in that roundtable, we talked about a lot of planes, TR-3B, the Aurora project, we talked about the Black Manta, all this. Even the Black Manta, if you look at the specs on it and what it can do, there's nothing in there to say that it can actually move and maneuver the way that this craft does. It's a
forward propulsion-based system.
This craft is a purely science fiction ideal up until this point when you get documented evidence of it. And at that point, there's really only two options. Either this thing exists and we're understanding this footage correctly, or they manipulated this footage and this is some type of smoke screen. But if they are manipulating the footage, they went about it in a way and in a manner that wasn't the best option to do. They could take that Manta and just give a little bit of it, and just visually, because of the perception we have of UFOs in our mind, that would blow people's minds 1,000 times more. But, I always kind of worked under this assumption, well, I know what a UFO looks like. It's a disc. It's, and this is what it does, and this is where it's from, and this is what it can do. And even when I was younger, and I had that, kind of preconceived notion in my mind. But when you look at this Tic Tac, nothing about that screams UFO traditional appearance.
No.
But what it does is mind-blowingly fascinating.
But along with that, though, there's also that whole preconceived notion of this is what a UFO or a UAP is, no ifs, ands, or buts. And there's been many cases where it's been disproved otherwise. There's no set shape. There's no standard shape. How many of our U.S. secret projects have been failed and declassified because they're trying to mimic these other shapes and they just can't figure out how? You know? And then the thing that tells me this could not have been doctored is I doubt that whoever was in charge of leaking this or releasing this video would doctor it to fit a pilot's narrative that has not changed no matter what time of day, no matter where he's been, no matter when he's been asked, because Fravor came out and started losing his mind about this immediately, where his wingman Dietrich had not. But Fravor was very adamant about this because he wanted to know what the heck that was, because he had some serious concerns, not only for his life, but for all of his other wingmen's lives out there, because they didn't know what the heck it was. And as a commander, that's very notable. That's very admirable of him, because he wasn't, it wasn't even about exposing something that was unknown. It was about making sure his team came home safe when they had to go out and experience that.
You hear that emotion in his voice when you've got the audio recording. You know, outside of Iceman, Goose, and Maverick, I've never seen any pilots that were real good actors. And, you know, that's a legitimate response. It feels legitimate. It feels honest. And they don't know what they're looking at. And if they don't know what they're looking at, you all probably don't know this, but I'm not an avionics specialist, and I've never flew a billion-dollar jet. There's no way I know what I'm looking at if they don't know what they're looking at. So the fact that it concerns them, it concerns me.
Especially someone who is that labeled, that decorated, and that experience with the thousands upon thousands of hours. I think he has the most amount, if not second most amount, of seat time in an F-18 flying it.
I think without that video coming out, he would have kept quiet, just out of the fear of the repercussion that so many other people have got for coming out.
But that's when your moral compass takes over, and he was more genuinely concerned about the safety of all of his crew and then himself over trying to keep something hush-hush.
Well, you know, if it was a U.S. government plane, I think when it was first recorded that it would have been told to people in the need to know, and that the footage would have been taken away, shelved or deleted, and we never would have saw it. Now, just because it wouldn't and the footage stayed there, to me, that screams, no, that is not one of our planes. And I don't think it is another country's plane.
Oh, I don't think that's even remotely possible.
And someone else, I had read some of the comments on the bottom of this article, and someone was like, oh, it's probably just a helicopter. You don't understand how rotor prop wash works, okay? It's not like an airplane. The older propeller-driven airplanes, you can see the backwash coming down in streaks and whatnot. A rotor is spinning in one direction, okay? And that force, you can watch helicopters on water, especially the Coast Guard videos, like when they're up in the Bering Sea and whatnot. You can see the distinction in the water because that wave goes around matching the force of the wind from that rotor.
Right.
I don't care how good you can doctor out shadows. It takes a heck of a lot of work. Okay, great. The shadow was made to fit the Tic Tac. But you can't doctor out Mother Nature like that. And the water was still clear.
Well, outside of an Apache and maybe some Black Op chopper we don't know anything about, what chopper can maintain a speed and a handling that a jet can go slow enough to keep up with and interact with at that level? And the change of elevation. None. I've been in small helicopters. I've never been in a military helicopter.
I've had that luxury of being able to enjoy some of those at a rotor fest. And my father being high up in the military at one point, there's nothing with a rotor that can sustain forward-moving flight even close enough to that, or be able to match the elevation increase as an F-18 decreases elevation to investigate. There's nothing out there that can.
Yeah, the one in Rambo 2 couldn't outrun the bow and arrow. So,
right.
I mean, no, I don't. If you look at the one, but you were talking about deleting footage, if you look at the one from the Nimitz, if I'm remembering correctly, and I'm not as familiar with this interview because I've only seen it one time, but they interviewed the guy that was in charge of the radar systems and all that.
Yeah,
and
the communications.
Yeah,
standard.
that was supposed to be deleted. It was because he didn't get to delete it, or it got slipped by and he held on to it. That's why it got out. And, you know, that they were intending to delete that. They didn't want anybody to know about that.
And unfortunately, or I guess fortunately for us, it wasn't along with this. So those two videos alone, anyone who is a skeptic or a non-believer, look at the circumstances and the people involved and listen to the raw emotion. Like you said, Justin, you can hear it in his voice. They are genuinely concerned because no one has a blessed freaking clue what that is that they're encountering.
Well, you know, in the Nimitz, I don't think they felt as threatened with it, but if you go back and listen to the audio on because they had cell phone footage from the Nimitz, there was people that got it, they're astonished at this. They're genuinely curious to what it is, and I would imagine, you know, there's definitely going to be some veterans on there, but there's also a lot of people on there who have a lot of experience around military hardware. You're not going to be amazed by a drone, because I seen this thing that was just somebody flying a drone. You're not going to be amazed by a drone. No. I mean, if you've seen a Predator drone, you're not going to be amazed by some, you know, I've seen a drone with Snoopy on it. It's Snoopy's house and the little Snoopy. Like, I've seen that drone. That would amaze me, but I wouldn't look at it and go, I wonder if that's from another planet. You know, I wouldn't look at it and go, is that a threat? These people were genuinely concerned by these objects, and they do. You know, somebody brought up that in a question manner. Well, this is just a drone. Well, they may all be drones. You know, we don't know that. We're not sure that they're all manned, whatever they are. Well, the U.S. To me, if the government owns that aircraft that Commander Fravor saw, it's definitely unmanned. But if you take them out of the equation, it easily could be, I don't know if you call it manned or occupied. Whatever.
Right, definitely. Do you have anything else to add there, Dirty Dan?
Yeah, on the back of that, even if it was a U.S.-owned unmanned aircraft, eventually, Fravor would have had to have been debriefed.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. And that would have probably changed his likelihood of coming out and speaking about it.
Right. There's been no debriefing, and anyone who knows any military, especially the Top Gun school or any of that, if there's no debriefing, it's because it's not planned.
It didn't happen,
even
so to speak.
when it's unplanned, there are debriefings.
Yeah. Well,
and there's still no debriefing.
I have asked this, and it's been a while. I'm going to start with Justin and ask him, because he's our special guest. Do you think the government will ever come clean within the next 5 years and say UFOs or aliens do exist, we've been in contact with them, here's what we know?
It's a complicated answer, because do I think so? Yes. But I don't think it will be for the right reasons, and I think we need a war, especially right now. And we've talked about this privately and on the podcast. I think, you know, what Reagan said was probably one of the truest statements ever. You know, it takes something outside of this world to unite us. And not just that, you know, pulling out of Afghanistan, and, you know, it's getting harder to find reasons for war, and it's getting harder to justify these just black pits of money we're putting into these other countries. But if maybe not an attack, if just an existence is confirmed and it can make people afraid enough, and I really think that's why all this stuff came out. It was, let's try to spread the fear a little bit, and let's drop all this black budget money into Space Force and these various projects, and let's just get our funding a different way. That's not to say I don't think there's a possibility of there being intelligent life coming. I just think if they disclose it the next 5 years, that'll be why. I think if we ever find out that there's real intelligent life out there and coming to this planet, I think it'll be because that group decides to make a contact that they can't hide. I don't believe they'll ever tell us that and be honest about it.
Well, you know, and you said something there like a war, like an alien war, and, you know, I think they do have the technology to do the Project Bluebeam, which would be a fake alien attack somewhere.
I mean, absolutely along with that. And I just based on, like, a case like Fravor's, I firmly believe that if they were going to quote-unquote attack us, it wouldn't be much of an attack unless they actually wanted control or complete resource harvesting of something here. I'm pretty sure it can just, you know, be like the Maldeck thing and just boom, we're gone. That's it. And we wouldn't know any different. Because Because if it was able to be happen then and stuff traced back to then, what's the difference between thousands of years later?
Well, that's a quote I heard from one of the thousands of YouTube black holes I went down that I just can't remember. But there was a gentleman, and he didn't particularly, I don't guess, professed his belief in alien life, but he said, if they're coming, why would they come to attack us? He said,
right.
We're not to the point that we can go to another planet yet. He said, and the reason we're not is because our goal is to be able to go to another planet and attack. He said, you kind of got to separate the two. Exploration and scientific discovery doesn't work real well with militarization. And,
Right.
if they've advanced that far, they're probably past the point, and they probably realize, technology-wise, we don't stand a whole lot of chance. So there's no glory in the victory for them. So, I don't see it as them, and that could be what's holding us back from being that species that makes it first. Because what if that is ours, and what if we're going to be the actual aliens for some other planet, and we're going to be the first people to come? We kind of got to get past that point. It don't need a bigger gun. It needs a better engine, and a lot more money's being put into the bigger gun than being put into the bigger engine.
That makes sense, and I've never thought about it that way. What's your take on what he just said, Dirty Dan?
I mean, I completely agree. Anytime someone comes to me to build a truck or what they want to do for a build, they're always like this, that, and the third for programmers and throwing fuel and air into an engine. I'm like, that's great, but how's your transmission? How's your transfer case? How's the rest of your driveline, your rear end, your gear set? You got to build up that machine first to take what you want to throw at it before you throw it at it, because otherwise you're just going to have a whole lot of cuss words, a whole lot of wasted time, and I'm just going to be going there, I told you so. You have to, again, you have to build up what you're using, the vessel you're using to go before you try and go. And I don't think that, I honestly don't think in 5 years that we're going to know, even for the wrong reason. I think it's going to be much longer, because if you look, history just repeats itself. And now that the excuses that they used to use 50, 60, 70 years ago are running out and people don't believe it, they're shifting it. And it's just going to be a continual pattern until something is able to abruptly stop it. And there's no choice but to either run away, step down, run away, disappear, or just tell the freaking truth.
Yeah.
No redactions, no hiding, no altering. What you see is what you get, because everybody's seeing it and they just want to know what we're getting.
I think they may have overplayed their hand a little bit too, because, I think the anticipated reaction to this was a mass media just, blitz and everybody going crazy over this and that. And that's not what happened, and it didn't get because there was so much else going on. If it was to serve a distraction of those things, it didn't work, and if it was to get the attention they needed to get a bigger budget for, Space Force or something like that, that didn't work, because I think people, one, are very untrusting of the government and anything they say, and two, it just come out at a bad time when there was so much else going on in the world. It still should have astonished people. It astonished me, but I don't think a lot of people paid a whole lot of attention to it, and that's, that may force them to do a little more, expose a little more.
And you know what, Goose? In 5 to 10 years, what I want to know is what happened to all that money they were looking for that we were supposed to find out on September 11th.
Yeah, well, you're not going to find anything about that. Now, and you said you didn't think it would happen in 5 years, and I can understand why you say that. If stuff happens and it changes like we think that it might, and we're going to take a break here shortly, Justin, because I know you're on a time crunch. It may be sooner than 5 years. It may be 3 years. It could be any.
I agree with that. But
3 to 5 years.
I don't think it's going to happen until that, whatever it may be, abruptly forces that to happen.
Right.
I agree with that to some degree. I think that extraterrestrial life is going to have to initiate that contact, because, if you've got a king and he's got all of his people within inside of a wall, and there's something outside of that wall he can't control, he can't be king of that outside of that wall, then the easiest thing to do is keep those people inside that wall.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. Justin, thank you for being here. We're going to take a short break, Dirty Dan, and we're going to play a preview of episode 45. We're going to end a preview of episode 46. And then we'll be back to wrap things up. Again, Justin Perkins of Talk Junkie was our special guest on this episode of Here to Chew Bubblegum. Be sure to check out Talk Junkie. You're also an author. Tell us where we can find your books and stuff at, Justin.
The two poetry books, Everyone is Different. Oh, no, that's the wrong book. The two poetry books, Cold Kingdom and Creating the Perfect Slaves, are available at the Red Spotted Newt, READ, Red Spotted Newt in Hazard, Kentucky. You can get up to them on Facebook. I far and away prefer you get them from there. It's cheaper. It's helping out a local business. If you can't, for some reason, or she's out of stock, you can get them on Amazon. They are available for Amazon Prime free direct shipping. Also did 2 books with my son. They're just little projects he and I worked on together that are available on Amazon. She may have a couple copies at the Note. It's called, the first one's called Everyone's Different, Just Like Me, and the second one's called The Boy with Super Hearing. He gets a big kick out of people getting those books. But the biggest thing is, on anything, the podcast, the YouTube page, the books, anything, like, subscribe, and share, leave reviews, whatever you can, because that helps us as podcasters, definitely helps me as an author.
Definitely. Dirty Dan, take us out to break.
You are listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum, and we'll be right back.
Hey everyone, this is Goose from Here to Chew Bubblegum. I want to tell you about my friend T-Shirt Joe at FastCustomShirts.com. T-Shirt Joe is your go-to guy for all your custom work. Also, you can check out their website and find artist originals, college shirts, comics, famous folk, fetish, military, movie shirts, occupations, podcast and website shirts, plus he has face masks and many other items over at FastCustomShirts.com. While there at their website, you can sign up for their newsletter. Or you can give Joe a call at area code 361-814-9212. That's 361-814-9212 to contact my friend T-Shirt Joe at FastCustomShirts.com.
Are you a horror movie fan? Yeah, I dig horror movies. Are you searching for a great internet horror talk radio show to listen to? Why, sure, that sounds quite spiffy. Then you need to tune into deadpit.com. It's the original horror talk radio show. Dead Pit is a show by the fans and for the fans. Uncensored and unbiased opinions are the goal of the show, giving fans honest reviews on new films and vintage classics of the horror genre. Make deadpit.com your #1 horror station destination.
When you want fresh, authentic Mexican food, you want El Picante in Coal Run. Dine on sizzling hot fajitas, the freshest pico de gallo, or if you're craving their secret ingredient jalapeno dip, the only place you'll find it is El Picante. Look, there are Mexican restaurants on every corner. The difference is in the mouth-watering food and the great service you'll get at El Picante in Coal Run. Visit El Picante for lunch today.
Take a lighter look into the darker side of the world. Join Elliot, Gertie, and Beagle as they jump into the dark abyss of hauntings, serial killers, conspiracy plots, and beyond. The Spooky Family Podcast premieres July 1st, wherever you find and listen to quality podcasts.
Howdy, folks. This is the Creepy Kentuckian from deadpit.com, and you're listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum.
This is a clip from part 1 of episode 45, The Roundtable.
As far as technology goes, and I'll start with DJ and ask all you guys this, in 5 years, what do you think would be a big technology advancement that we don't have now?
Yeah, what I think we're seeing is the human species on Earth is becoming self-aware and being able to intercommunicate the way the cells in a body can communicate, where they can communicate instantaneously with anyone else on Earth. And that's coming online, and we're slowly learning how to use that. You know, you have the dregs of society, which is usually found in comments on YouTube. And then you have the people like us who are actually using these tools to make a difference. Like you guys are talking about helping to track down people who might be caught up in human trafficking. And I think that's the future. It's not so much the technology is going to change, but that's going to be seamless. What's more going to change that I hope to see, that I hope people like us are driving, is that the way we use these tools is going to be different, because we're going to be using them for our own empowerment instead of empowering corporations and enriching corporations. So I think the quantum internet is going to change everything at a fundamental level. And I hope that that's real and not just rumor, but yeah, time will tell.
I want to completely piggyback off of what you said, DJ. Like, I completely agree with you. And in that also, and I'm already seeing it like on my Telegram and within like our community that we have growing, is not only are we changing the utilization of our interneting. Is that a word? It is now. But as we're this is how I look at it, because there's duality in everything. As we're advancing on this technological road, we're also, regressing, if you will, back to small businesses, back to helping each other, back to that commune type style of bargain and trading and, money doesn't really exist type of deal, and really just building each other up and building those little communities, which are starting to come together into a bigger one, which is what this is all about. That is the Great Awakening, is raising the vibration together and helping the planet ascend.
Justin?
I think you guys summed it up pretty good. I mean, it's the fact that you've got all these individuals who are from very different parts of the world and country, with Mr. Nicke, in a different country, come together, and it's important enough to discuss the future, and it's important enough to discuss ideals that aren't the social norm. Because for the most part, if we just listen to the programming, to social media, to TV, to things of that nature, we're told pretty well what we need to talk about, and it's not these things. It's not where are we going in the future? How can we help other people? How can we come together? And the comment about going back to small businesses and things like that, it seems like, the country has grown exponentially under this large industry, and, your profits are up for everybody across the board in that regard, but not for those small businesses and not for individual people. And to go back to something like that small business setup is really to kind of take that power back for the people, and it becomes a government that represents a people instead of a government that represents a large corporation. And I agree with that notion 110%. And if that ideal wouldn't work, then we wouldn't have got to the point we are right now, because that's how we got started as a country, and that's how we got to this point.
Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I think that as far as technological advancement goes, I'm on the bandwagon that we already have a whole bunch of technology that isn't, publicly accessible. Anybody who's gone down any rabbit hole has ended up on, one of the Nikola Tesla threads. And at the end of the day, we had free electricity 110 years ago, 120 years ago. I think the very near future will bring about some ancient technologies that have been redeveloped and just controlled. Some interesting and amazing new transportation technologies, maglev trains, anti-gravity, personal vehicles. I think we're going to be rapidly headed towards, what we all used to watch on the Jetsons as a kid. I think that the quantum internet that DJ mentioned is a huge thing. The idea that there's all of this science and technology that hasn't accounted for the ether, or what I think there's going to be a lot of new advancements, and a lot of the internet has given us the ability to share information in a way that we never have been able to before. And there's a lot of things out there, a lot of scientific experiments, both in technology and in the human technology of the body and vibration, that I think are going to become commonplace very soon, and allow us to reach that positive utopia style future that we're all, trying to push for.
Very well said. And I know that it's AURON. I don't know why I said Aaron prior, so I'm sorry for that.
No, it happened. Some of my oldest and best friends still do it. It's because your mind, when you read my name, it automatically, because Aaron is like the most common name with that sequence of letters that you see. So I don't take offense.
Okay. Now, Rebecca had a comment, and then Sonya, I want your opinion, and then Dirty Dan, after Sonya gives us her opinion, read the next question, please.
Absolutely.
So I just whenever we get in these groups, whenever we have these discussions, I always go back to that one quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, and it's great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. And that's what we're doing. We are discussing ideas. We are desperately trying to bring together as many like-minded people as possible. We are joining forces. We are discussing the future and everything that goes along with that. I see DJ has his hand up.
Well, and it's amazing when we start to use the internet for that reason. You know, like I've connected with villagers in Kenya who've created shoes that charge your phone while you walk, because he embedded piezoelectric crystals in the sole of the shoe and then hooked it up to a USB charge port. So as he walked to town, he could charge his phone. Like the ingenuity of the human species is unbridled. And once we can communicate freely and it's not controlled by these corporations who have withheld the free energy that I was talking about that we've had for hundreds of years, once they're no longer withholding these advances, human civilization is going to take off like we can't even imagine.
This is a clip from part 2 of the Roundtable, episode 46.
Well, and not just that, but what's even more disconcerting about that is the excuse about the whole Vegas percentage of children is that it's not a majority number. It's not enough to be so concerned about it. What? You're saying 80,000 kids going missing in your state a year is not something to be concerned about because 290,000 are still okay? That's not okay.
Yeah, what's the percentage? Like what percentage is 80,000 of 200 and something? I mean, that's almost a quarter.
Well, they say
okay
300,
a quarter of your children to go missing. All right.
They say 350,000 kids in that state.
Yeah.
But 80,000, which would be
almost a third.
Yeah. So apparently because it's 33.33% or less, it's okay. No, that's not how that works. That's not how that works at all. And, well, I'm not going to get us in trouble and say how I really feel about that.
All right. We all feel the same way, brother.
We are back, and hopefully Justin and I sound better now. I think we just had a really bad storm come through. We do have internet, but I switched out a hot box, and you guys sound a lot better on our end here as well since we're on the hot box. So hopefully we won't lose the net anymore. But
is it a bad storm, or are they just trying to keep us from communicating?
No,
always?
It was a very bad storm.
Do me a favor.
Yes, sir.
Go out and look, or Justin, in the parking lot, and tell me if you see any earthworms or not.
Okay. Well, we'll have to do that after we get done with this, and we'll let you know that when we record the radio show.
Rebecca and AURON are aware of that, but I made the point out that you can always tell the difference between rain, because when it's got that nice earthy smell, you see the earthworms.
Yeah. Well, the place that we're at now, like I said when we started, this is the new studio, and they took really good care of us. They even took a special at their expense, and they upgraded their internet so we would have internet back here in our new studio. There's a thing right outside the door. So, I mean, we had full signal when we started, and the connection didn't get that bad until actually the storm came in. But I do have a hot box that Justin and I are hooked up on now. I hope we didn't miss anything. So
no, we continue the conversation. I haven't even gotten to say my points that I've had my hand up for 25 minutes now on.
If you want to go ahead and say your points and then read the last topic that the listener suggested, please feel free.
So getting back to the Reagan thing, on September 16th of 83, he made a speech to Russia that basically put the UN and everyone else on a subtle notice about this, saying we're not that different at all. Like, that man almost ended the Cold War with that speech, unintentionally talking about ET life forms, and the encounters he had. But people don't talk about that. At least I've heard that it goes back to when he was even governor of California, and he was returning from a trip in 1974 in a Cessna Citation, and he and a pilot and 2 of his Secret Service members literally got chased down, and it's recorded on FAA traffic by a UFO. It was a craft that did come up on their radar screen that literally quadrupled in length before doing a very high climb out and then disappearing completely. That is on record.
There's a when you just said about the ship changing shape, it just tripped a memory. There's an interesting it was a mini series that was done, I think, on NBC, and I think it was done by Spielberg. It's called Taken, and it was like a 3 or 4 part mini series. Dakota Fanning was in it, and the whole series covers like a 60-year period from the original contact of aliens or whatever with our species, and then it shows these multiple families and how it travels down, and these beings came down, and all the abductions were specifically to impregnate humans and raise hybrids. And the interesting part of it was that Dakota Fanning ended up being like one of these hybrid children, and she was so intelligent because she was part alien, and they could create ships simply with their mind because they had the ability to manipulate our reality. And she could take people outside of time. She could change the shapes and manipulate our reality as almost like in the movie Inception. And so it's interesting because a lot of people talk about the experiences they've had witnessing ships, changing shape or changing direction in ways that completely defy physics. And it's if all
Dirty Dan, tell us about Adventures with Purpose.
All right, so Goose, Adventures with Purpose is a group. You can find them on YouTube. Just type in AWP or Adventures with Purpose. And Jared Lysick and Sam are 2 of the main guys of it. They are just a set of amazing people who have taken their talents and connections to the highest degree of self-service to give back to those who need it most, and really when they need it most. I mean, I'm talking just on a single person level up to entire communities and counties and areas. Like I said, go to YouTube and either the app or youtube.com. Go ahead and type in Adventures with Purpose. Hit the like button. Give them a subscribe. These guys are sonar and underwater dive specialists, and they have a skill set that is very hard to come by, and they volunteer all of their time. They're not paid to do it. They travel across the country, leaving their families, their jobs for months on end sometimes. And next month, they'll be here in Kentucky for 2 very special cases. I'm not going to announce them yet. I've been asked to keep that private. I've established a connection with Jared, and we'll be meeting up with them, and we will have them on our podcast, and hopefully we can have a radio show segment with them, so you can hear it right out the horse's mouth. They need all the help and support they can get because they deserve it. So if you like what you see on YouTube and you want to reach out to them, or you have a personal connection to a missing case, or you are looking for closure and answers yourself, go to adventureswithpurpose.com, and I promise Jared and or Sam or a number of them will get back to you very quickly, and they will set up to come out and help you as well.
Again, that's adventureswithpurpose.com. Special thanks to Carlin for all the voiceover work. Don't forget about the new Midlife Crisis album, available now on iTunes, Spotify, CD, anywhere you find great music. Be sure to stop by and say hello to CK, Uncle Bill, and the rest of the gang over at deadpit.com. Justin Perkins of Talk Junkie. Check out Down on the Holler with Jordan and Brad, Seth's Daily Podcast. Don't forget about the Spooky Family Podcast. And if you want to awaken more, be sure to check out Rebecca Short of Tik Tok and Honest Rebecca Thoughts. Again, I want to thank all of the special guests that appeared on today's episode. AURON, Sonya, DJ Nicke, and of course our friend Justin Perkins. That'll do it for this week. We'll see you next week, and until then, so long for now.
Maybe I'm not leaving. Maybe I'm just going home.
for listening to Here to Chew Bubblegum. Tune in next time as we dive deeper into things the government doesn't want us to know.